Good Wednesday afternoon, guys. My name is Jerry Miller, and welcome to the I Love CVille Show. Thank you kindly for joining us. We have a Charlottesville, Central Virginia, Commonwealth, country, and worldwide audience at our disposal as we stream this show on every social media platform known to mankind. You, the viewer and listener, can help shape the discussion by offering your thoughts in the comments section on any platform you're watching upon. I will relay that perspective live on air. We would love to highlight, before we begin the interview with Simmons, the founder and CEO of Greenberry's Coffee Company, we'd love to highlight the Clifton, just a fantastic hotel and restaurant in the Keswick area in Charlottesville, one of our partners. We encourage you to try the Clifton, guys, either for happy hour, for dinner, for an event, for a corporate retreat, or for a getaway from the hustle and bustle of Charlottesville, about 10 minutes from the downtown mall. The Clifton, absolutely five-star service. The Clifton in Keswick, guys. Judah Wickhauer is our director. If we could go to the studio camera and welcome a friend of the show, all-around A-plus guy, a visionary, a risk-taker, a leader, and yes, Simmons, I can follow you around every week if you would like me to and continue. Welcome to the show. Thank you, my friend, for joining us.
Thank you, Jerry. Appreciate it. I'm glad to be here.
We love having you here.
Great.
I believe this is your second rodeo on the show.
It is, yes.
If you could introduce yourself to everybody that's watching the program.
Sure. Well, I'm Simmons, and I always have to include my other half, which is Roxanne Simmons. We're both co-founders and owners of Greenberry's Coffee. We've been in Charlottesville for over 30 years. Serving the customers coffee and a little place to gather in the community. So
you got a global brand, a lot of hard work, a lot of risk taking.
Yep.
Didn't start as a global brand, started as a storefront. Give us the evolution, my friend.
Oh, sure. Yeah. If you go back 30 years, I remember January 1992 was when we opened the first store in Barracks Road Shopping Center, and what a time that was, different than today. I always tell one funny story. If you go back to 1992, those of you that were around then, it was such a different time, especially in the coffee space. Starbucks was this relatively unknown brand on the West Coast. They had opened a few stores in Chicago, but really on this side of the world, we didn't know much about it. And we got into the space because we were ready to do something new, something entrepreneurial. And coffee was an idea because I had contacts and friends through family that were in the coffee business, including one of my biggest mentors I always talk about, Alfred Peet, who started Peet's Coffee and Tea on the West Coast. So we thought, this has got some legs. Coffee is such an integral part of human existence. Why don't we try to make a run of it? And so that's really where the idea was born and launched. But the first couple of years was interesting because we had to convince the public that a coffee shop, which we now take for granted, was a new, different, exciting thing. And the funny story I always say is there was this very nice lady that was, I think she was one of the original shopkeepers over on the North Wing or something like that. She came over and just crushed Roxanne. She comes over and puts her arms around her and says, "Honey, you're just going to have to sell more than coffee." And in my mind, and if she's listening, forgive me, but in my mind I was like, "Honey, when was the last time you got out of Charlottesville?"
Right.
I was like, really, there's something going on here, and we're going to introduce you to it and that kind of thing. And that's where it all started. And we started. The idea was always we roast our own coffee from day one. We control our supply chain. We do everything we possibly can, and really wanted to become that community gathering place. And I think that's what we did really well, especially in the early years. We had that connection with UVA, which was critical. And so that's where it all started.
I can't wait to highlight the vertically integrated nature of this brand, the relationship he built with John Castine and UVA to be the exclusive coffee of the University of Virginia. That says something. I love this story, and I've heard it before, so I want to highlight when you first opened in Barracks Road, the traffic was so significant that you constantly were repairing an aspect of the front door.
Right,
Tell us that story.
Yeah. Well, we I guess we probably brought some cheap hinges when we first built the store, but that little door opened and closed so much that we wore the hinges out. So then I went off to the hardware store and bought the fanciest, best Stanley hinges I could get. They lasted about 6 months. So, back then we were really the only game in town, and I think we excelled at what we did, and it was just tremendous. It was we had more traffic in the Barracks Road store than most large retailers or grocery stores had. And those were the years where we were just really cranking. So,
can you put in perspective? I love highlighting the growth of locally owned businesses. Put in perspective when you had this aha moment. You and Roxanne, your beautiful wife, were literally behind the counter in the beginning.
Yeah.
I mean, they were the face of, they were who you saw at the shop. They were serving you. When did you realize that this was an opportunity to truly scale something?
Well, and again, I want to paint some color in that picture really quickly too. Yeah, the way we operated then, it was as grassroots entrepreneurial as you could possibly be. Roxanne and I would go in and open the store in the morning, get things underway, and we had a really good team. Then I would go run off to McIntyre Business Park and roast coffee for the rest of the day. Roxanne would drive her little Honda Civic at the time and make deliveries around local restaurants and things in Charlottesville. And then at the end of that day, we'd get back together in the store and shut the store down and do it all again the next day. And that was a 7-day-a-week thing. So it was quite an adventure at the time. But yeah, there was... it's over 30 years. I like to say, you always hear Sam Walton used to say he was the best overnight story that took 45 years in the making. And I understand now what he was saying, because the reality was, if I look back over 30 years, there were always those pivotal, important decisions and moments that took place. And when you look back, the time blurs and it all condenses so much. But there were... Believe it or not, the single best decision we ever made in that whole history was to actually not grow during certain periods of time. When Starbucks became so dominant, and I say it was about 15 to 16 years of our history, Starbucks was the only game in town. Like Apple Computers, they were this company that just had almost a cult-like following to them. And I watched a lot of companies say, we can compete against them. And I looked at it and said, they were so dominant. So we actually made the decision to cool our jets a little bit, and not go crazy with development, because I knew if we did, up against that machine, it was going to be a house of cards. And it was really one of the best decisions we ever made, because most of my contemporaries are not around anymore. And we are here, we're strong, we're global, doing a great job. And it was because we were smart enough to realize, even though, when you're young, you want to take over the world.
Sure.
With everything you want to do, you've got all this, got to do it. But I think we were smart enough to realize, no, we need to just, we got a great thing going. We had Charlottesville well under control. We had a presence in D.C. and our store in McLean and whatnot. And we're like, this is great. We've got quality, what we're doing. Let's just coast on that a little while, because we knew Starbucks won't be this way forever. No company is.
Can you highlight the guys? Wait till you hear this. It's truly impressive. The vertically integrated nature of your company and brand.
That was a strategic thing from the very beginning, and I think it separates us from most local, smaller startup coffee companies. We always said in the very beginning we had to roast our own coffee, so we had our own roastery from the start, which is really its own business model. We certainly supply our stores, but we supply restaurants and national retailers and distributors and things like that.
You white label.
We do, yes. Yeah. Oh, I'll sell coffee beans anyhow someone wants them. So yeah, we do that. But so that was the core of our business. The retail component was obviously another piece of it. Then we looked at growth options through franchising and licensing, because we knew we couldn't be everywhere all the time, especially as we were small and growing. So we looked for those partnerships and relationships to do that. And then, even if you go more recently, we went into a totally different world with our Nitro cold brew, which is a ready-to-drink beverage. And that's the one that's really exciting in the current realm, because it's so scalable. That's something that we pick up national retailers, and we can really move that very quickly. So
scalable how?
Just speed, just the speed at which it can take off. Growing coffee shops is a steady growth model. You have to locate real estate, you got to build stores, supply chain issues, stuff like that right now. It takes time. But something like, selling Nitro cold brew to any national retailer, one decision maker can put you in thousands of stores, and it just turns on overnight. And so that's an element that we've never had, and we're really experiencing that right now and working with a lot of great people. So, but back to your point, that vertical integration is key, especially as we maybe talk about investors and Start Engine a little bit later in this conversation, because at any given moment, there might be pressure on one piece of our business. We'll talk about inflation, things like that. But it won't affect all of our silos or all of our pieces of our business. So if we ever have a pressure on one side, something else is booming. And in our 30 years, that's the way it's always been. Something's booming, something's got a little bit of pressure on it, and those pieces move around. But it's always allowed us to remain very strong and very healthy no matter what the economy's doing.
John's watching in Virginia Beach. Welcome, John, or excuse me, Norfolk, to the show. Harvey Mayorga, the owner of Guajiros Restaurant on West Main Street, says, this is great coffee. Harvey, thank you, chef, for watching the program. David, the owner of Skooma Boutique Dispensary, welcome to the show. Congrats on your success, David, with your 2 locations here in Charlottesville. Let's throw this to you. The influence or the impact the University of Virginia has had on Greenberries. I remember as a student at UVA from 2000 to 2004, many afternoons studying at your Barracks Road location, falling in love with your coffee when I had just a few bucks in my pocket. And now, as a 4-year-old married man, a father, we still go to your coffee. My wife swears by your coffee and says it's the best in town. The influence of UVA and John Castine on Greenberries.
Yeah, well, it was pivotal from the start. I mean, we knew strategically that we needed to be there, and since coffee shops in the way we do it was so new, we knew the opportunity was there, and no one was there yet, no one was doing it. It was a sheer luck and happenstance that John Castine did what he did, and to this day, we're family friends with him and the Castine family.
Former president, UVA.
Long-standing, yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Very respected man in many ways. But John was an early adopter of the coffee scene. And John obviously is well-traveled in his career and whatnot. And I remember there was this fateful day where he came into our store in Barracks Road and introduced himself, talked to us a little bit. He said he really would like to bring something like Greenberries onto the grounds of UVA. And we're like, great, absolutely,
Yeah. You did a jumping jack. You jumped in the air.
Yeah, in my mind, quietly. I'm trying to be as poised as I can be. And then a couple of days later, we set up a meeting with Airmark, who's their food service provider for the grounds, and it was a great meeting. We had the meeting in the store. John wanted to kind of show them this is what we want to do, because really Airmark wasn't doing that kind of thing either at the time. And John's words were something along the lines of, we really need something like this at UVA. And the Airmark folks were like, okay, we'll do it. So we put a deal together right then. And the funny story was, we had a very small little store over on the corner on Ellwood Avenue. I don't know what it is now, but that store, the idea was that store would reach the student base. And for whatever reason, I think our location just wasn't perfect to do that. So I approached John and said, John, my lease term's coming up. Why don't we just, over a weekend, just up and move the store? Because he was already thinking about Alderman Library. I said, why don't we just move the store? And he thought that was the best idea ever, because we could click our fingers, and in a weekend we'd turn it and make it work. And that's what we did. We rented the trucks, got all the people, and we literally moved that store over a weekend and reopened it in Alderman. And just what a long-term success that's been. Just had some meetings with the folks at Alderman because they're redoing that whole building. Greenberries will be the feature there when it reopens in the spring of '24. And it's going to be a fantastic new location. So celebrating over 30 years there now. 30
years. I mean, What's that mean to you? That's significant, Sean.
Yeah, well, I feel old, I guess, So 30 years, oh my gosh. But, to be honest with you, the magic with UVA from a business perspective was every year UVA graduates, I don't know, you would know more than me. How many students every year?
So probably undergrad, 8 to 10?
Yeah, and then the graduates
8 to 10K.
As graduates as well.
Yeah.
And they're all fans of Greenberries. And so we're pushing those Greenberries people all over the world. And one story, I think this is one of the greatest stories I tell about Greenberries history. As you've said, we've opened stores in as far away as Osaka, Japan, Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. And every store I've ever opened, domestically or internationally, irregardless of how far away it was, there has been a UVA grad that shows up on opening day.
Wow.
Every single one. In fact, the woman who was the head attaché of the Commerce Department in Japan was a UVA grad.
Get out.
And she shows up to our opening day wearing her full UVA sweater and everything, and she's just like cheerleading to the max. And it was fabulous. That's what UVA means to us. Is just that instant recognition.
I love it. Lee Elberson, welcome to the program. He's watching on LinkedIn. He's the CEO of Claiborne Education and 8 Hats. Let's talk ownership and an opportunity for the public to be an investor in Greenberries. Judah Wickower, our director, has shared the Start Engine link in the comment section of every social media platform this show is airing upon. The URL for those who are listening is startengine.com/coffee. Sean, the show is yours on this opportunity. I mean, you've raised $112,000+ I mean, this is significant here. The idea, where it came from, what it means to be a potential investor in Greenberries, and expectations for investors.
Yeah, well, and this is our second raise. We raised close to $300,000 in the first raise. We have over 400 plus investors. A lot of those are local Greenberries customers in Charlottesville, obviously. It's an interesting history. We've always bootstrapped our company. We've never really had outside investors in our 30 years because I never wanted any single investor to have kind of undue pressure on me because I want to run the company, the way I think it should be run. So we didn't really look to outside investment too much. But then, I don't remember exactly how, but I became aware of the equity crowdfunding space, which is specifically what this is, a little bit different than just crowdfunding. And Start Engine is really a dominant player there. And the idea was perfect for me because as an entrepreneur, I wanted to be able to have investors that truly believe in the brand, so customers can invest. You don't have to be an accredited investor. A share, you can invest as little as $110 to join our family in a sense. So low entry, don't have to be accredited, makes it easy for all of the fans of Greenberries to become a part of what we do. And then the idea was because crowdfunding is all about a large number of small investors. From my entrepreneurial mind, that just meshes with me. It's just that feels good. That's what I wanted to do. So I just was really excited about it.
Why does it mesh with you?
Because, as I said, I'm an entrepreneur, and I think people that are just kind of everyday customers of ours can come in and spend a little bit of money and actually own a piece of the company that they're a customer to. I mean, that's just a great idea and a great thing to do. And Start Engine is really state of the art because they make it so easy. Their website's fantastic. And they also, a key component to it is Start Engine has what's called a secondary market. So one of the biggest challenges in crowdfunding or investing in a small company is you buy the shares, but then what do you do with them? You just have to sit and wait till something major happens with the company. But with Start Engine, with the secondary market, after you hold your shares for a year, you actually can buy and sell your shares. So you can buy more shares in the company. If you want some liquidity, you can sell them and buy something else. And that was key to me as well because liquidity for any investors is crucial. And that setting up that marketplace. So we're really excited. Our shares will be going into that secondary market later this year. And this will by no means be the last round we do. It's been a success for us to raise capital for the company.
How's the crowdfunding, how are the dollars going to be utilized?
Well, you make statements to that effect in your raise and whatnot. For us, it's going to be a series of different things. It's adding to our professional team, to the management team to support the growth that we're going after. It's also investing in infrastructure. We're moving into our brand new plant at the end of this month, and our ready-to-drink beverage line, things like that. It's just buying more equipment so that we can produce that scalability I talked about. The ability to be able to meet that demand. So it's infrastructure, it's people, and it's pushing the sales force.
Tell us about the new headquarters.
Yeah, that's very exciting. With COVID, it's been a long road, but I think next month we'll finally be moving in. We've always been in lease spaces for what we do, but this was buying our own dirt, putting our own building up. Really excited about that. So it's a state-of-the-art facility for us. It'll be a combination of our corporate headquarters, all of our offices will be there, but also our full production capabilities will also be in the building. We're actually going to be putting in place, I'm sure it is the largest coffee roaster in Central Virginia by far. It's tripling our capacity. So I'm really excited. I always like hardware, and this is a big coffee roaster, and it's going to be really let us meet that demand.
You mentioned COVID and the pandemic, knock on wood here behind us, fortunately. How did you guys navigate the pandemic?
It was tough. Probably the single biggest acute attack, on our company. I remember in the first week of April sitting down with my team, and I had already furloughed 90% of my staff across the board, retail, wholesale, you name it. So I sat in a room with 12 people who were the 12 key people I had to do everything possible to keep. And we had this conversation about, because a lot of them are younger than me, and I said, guys, we don't know what the effects of this are going to be. We don't know if it's going to hurt us, going to kill a lot of our friends and family. Is it going to be quick and over? We just didn't know. But I told them, I said, prepare for the worst, hope for the best. And we took big precautionary steps, but it was tough. I mean, we went from the first quarter of 2020 was the best quarter in our history.
Wow.
To zero.
Yeah.
And just overnight. I mean, 2 weeks, it just turned off.
Did you guys shut down the stores?
2 of the stores shut down. The store on Barracks Road, the original store, never shut down.
Wow.
I had a sales target that if it went below that number, we would have to shut it down. Otherwise, it was open because I needed to keep my people employed. I was losing money, but I needed to keep them employed. We came within $5 of that number.
No way.
And never went below it. So, Missy and all the team that were there through all those times, I mean, they were putting their own health at risk, but we kept serving customers throughout the entire pandemic. So.
Was that your most challenging time as the leader of this brand, as the CEO?
Again, in an acute way, yes.
Yeah.
It hit us so hard, black swan event out of nowhere. Nobody expected this. I think I saw the potential of it coming before some other people did, just seeing the writing on the wall, and we started making some steps. You sit there and say to yourself, the tough decisions. Who do I furlough? Who do I just absolutely have to keep? Because, furloughed people, you may lose them. So we went through those exercises. We very quickly said, the way you survive this is you shut it down, you go into a cocoon, you preserve cash, and then you come out strong on the other side, because some people won't make it. And, so we've got a clearer runway now. I hate to say some of our competitors didn't make it, but we came out the other side strong. But as you've said, challenges. We come out of that, you're like, oh, thank God. And then we've got these new challenges right now.
Inflation, labor, supply chain.
Which are actually almost harder than COVID was.
Oh, explain that.
Well, you come out of COVID, everybody's weakened. I mean, and what got a lot of us through was some of the government programs and stuff, which helped. PPP, things like that was a lifesaver for us and a lot of companies. So you come out of that, you're in a weakened state, but you're like, okay, now we're ready to roll. And then, wham, inflation just nails us. In 30 years, coffee prices always fluctuate up and down. Usually when we have a coffee spike, it's because of frost, weather issues, diseases on the plant, stuff like that. Those are usually pretty temporary. The markets will react strongly. It might last a month or so. Prices come back down, you're fine. We've had 30-year high coffee prices for the last 6 months.
Wow.
So they're sustained and they're high. My average price that I'm paying for the raw product went up about 300%.
Man.
Yeah, and I can't obviously pass that on to consumers, so we're working hard for a lot less money right now. But again, it will come back down, and it's just a matter of persevering and waiting it through. But on top of that, you said inflation, so the cost of our fuel to run the equipment has gone through the roof. Cost of labor has gone through the roof. Labor shortages, big challenges. So really right now, COVID was one specific thing that you had to deal with, and it was big, but it was one specific thing. Now we're dealing with 10 things, and they're all negative, and dealing with those. But, I guess because I've been doing this for 30 years, and I've actually seen and been through several recessions, a lot of younger people don't realize that.
You think we're in a recession now?
Absolutely.
Yeah, me too.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's a weird recession because this will be our second quarter of negative growth. I have no doubt about that. But we're still having these other weird effects, pulling my econ major out here. But, we've got wage growth. We've got employment growth still. Those are things you don't normally expect to see in a recessionary time. Those are legacies from COVID, though, and those are going to slow down. The Fed needs to slow this economy down. And it will correct some of the issues I'm talking about. Coffee prices are already starting to come off their highs because people are anticipating demand's going to drop. So, if you remember back to the Reagan days, which I was around then, they had to force the economy into a recession to stop inflation, because inflation is so insidious and so destructive. I don't think they'll be that aggressive this time. Politically, I don't think they can do that, but they've got to slow this thing down some.
Sean Simmons is killing it right now. Let's talk about the expansion of the brand. Why I love your brand, and I don't want to compare it to Starbucks, but Starbucks is so sterile to me, and they're turning into this like significant technology play where they're taking away the intimacy out of the model, where it's like you don't know your barista. You're not sitting at the table and having a conversation over coffee, and it's not the community center, the epicenter of local conversation, the water cooler, if you may.
Right.
You are the antithesis of that. You guys are the epicenter of conversation. You are the local water cooler, and you want to be an opposite. You want to be part of the fabric of the community.
Right.
Give us some insight into this.
Yeah, that's really spot on. And again, Starbucks did lose it, and it's predictable. Large company, big success, pressures of Wall Street and everything else. Schultz leaving, different CEOs coming in, all very expected, and I think reflected. And Schultz coming back in is going to have to tackle that issue. I mean, he puts out notices about that. You're right. We never left that. The essence for Greenberry's, and I really think this is the essence for any successful coffee shop, is you need to be that center of your community where people like to come gather and do what they do in a coffee shop. It can be, two friends just having a conversation, business meetings. I've had architects rolling out their plans in the stores to do their thing. That's what a successful coffee business needs to be, is have those roots and really be fixated in your community. And we've never lost that. We've never lost the idea of how important that is. And so when we look to place a store, and again, whether it's in Japan or Saudi or wherever, the key thing for us, the very first thing we say to ourselves is this market, does it have an identity as a community of some kind? And that can be defined many ways. And as long as that identity exists, then we can tap into it and locate the store in a good place, and then do all the marketing, social media, and all the things we need to do to really ingrain ourselves in that community. And that's the magic. And we're not the only people to discover that, but I think we're good at executing it.
The coffee business historically has been a pretty insulated business from macro trends. If we could talk about the franchise expansion opportunity and how now is a phenomenal time, especially as we talked about before the show, this great resignation is happening, and folks are looking to reinvent their professional career path. The opportunity to be your own boss is maybe more prioritized than it has been in a long time.
Yeah.
How could that apply to Greenberry's?
Yeah, and historically this is a second wave of that. We saw this in the 1980s. It was a boom for franchises. We are seeing similar elements now. It's funny, different reasons, but the outcomes are going to be the same. And just to weave back to kind of how can you be a part of Greenberry's and be part of the family? You can invest in Greenberry's, buy some shares on Start Engine, easy to do, startengine.com/coffee. But you can also buy a franchise. So if you like Greenberry's, you want to own your own Greenberry's in your own community or whatnot, that's the big way we like to grow. So both of those opportunities exist. It is a business that is very resilient, especially to recessionary pressures, things like that. Because, think about it, I mean, coffee is something we all drink every day. And if you don't drink coffee every day, you do drink tea or something else that we sell. So we see those customers every day. They're the foundation of our business. And that all, I think, is very important. The franchising model, as you've said, COVID created this environment where people are really rethinking quality of life, family, how do I want to spend my second career ideas, things like that. And so that's driving a tremendous growth. And where I started to see that about really towards the beginning of 2021. We were all tired of COVID and the lockdowns and everything else, but people had been working from home long enough that they were starting to rethink, I like this new way. And that caused a lot of people to say, I don't want to go back to that old office I used to go to. So yeah, I think the Great Resignation is a sign of people are rethinking their lives. COVID is dramatically changing the world's landscape, and it's accelerating certain trends. And so we've seen our phones are the leads and the phone calls we're getting on franchising has gone up exponentially. And I think that's just the beginning. I think we're going to see a big wave of growth for us in the franchise.
I'm curious. I respect your opinion tremendously here. Do you think and this is kind of like a catch-all question, do you think COVID was managed correctly by our government? And then the follow-up question to that, now we got the Fed and Jay Powell trying to squash inflation. We both are in agreement that we're in a recession now. I think those data points will come out next week for Q2. Is Powell handling this right? I mean, we got tremendous volatility in the stock market. We got the mom and pops, Main Street. Their margins are more pinched than they've ever been, as you've already outlined. Yeah. So it's a two-part question. Was COVID managed correctly where big boxes were prioritized, big box stores were prioritized and deemed essential, and Main Street was not? And then the second part is, are you confident in Powell and the Fed managing this rate hike to squash inflation?
Well, I'll proceed by saying no one was ready for this. No one could have anticipated this. So it's hard to criticize people overall because no one really knew what to do with this. So, I don't criticize too hard. And some of the government programs, like, as I said, the PPP loans and things like that, that actually helps small businesses tremendously. So those were created out of thin air, implemented very rapidly, and I give a lot of credit to the government for doing those things because it really did, I think, save a very large number of small businesses in particular. GE and other large companies, they didn't get PPP money, or they were supposed to. But the small companies did. It wasn't that difficult to navigate through it. So I think that was a big plus and a big success. The challenge our government has is they can never stop spending money, obviously. And so where we're dealing with some of these recessionary pressures is they couldn't turn those spigots off. And I think some of the additional stimulus money that was put in place later, it's politicians' nature to spend money. So this was a wild, wild west for them to spend money. So they spent too much. They pushed too much liquidity into the world. And that's one of the major reasons why we've got the inflation pressures right now, without a doubt. There are other reasons too, but that is one of the major ones that has caused it. So I do blame our elected leaders for that. They know better, but they also can't stop themselves. We know that as a public. So I think that wasn't managed well. Powell is in the middle of a political environment, and I'm sure he has his own playbook of what exactly he would like to do, but any Fed secretary has to deal with political pressures. A president right now, which I think is a little bit different than Reagan at the time, the president now doesn't want to see us plunge this thing into a recession, even though that textbook would be the best and quickest way to get through this pain. But politically, that's a nightmare. It's a disaster for re-election and things like that. So he's in the middle of a difficult spot. I think he will, I don't know anything about him. I get the sense that he will try to thread the needle. He will try to not be too much one way or the other, which will bring middling results to this. We probably won't end the recession as fast as we should. But I just think, I don't think he won't be as aggressive as Volcker was, for example, back in the Reagan era. So I think he's going to thread the needle. So yes, I think we're going to be in a recession, but I think you have so much money in the system. Americans are always optimistic. I don't think this will last too long. The average recession is 2.5 years. So that's what we plan for. I think the rest of this year will be recessionary, inflationary. I think turning into next year it will linger. But then I think by mid next year we're going to start to see things improving, unless there's another black swan event.
Sure.
A war. Those things are all things you just can't expect. But left to its own devices, I think that by mid next year we'll start to see the light at the end of the tunnel with this thing.
You got a lot of folks watching you here. What's the advice you give to the business owners, the CEOs, the shot callers at their respective businesses to get through this? Well,
two things. Prudent business is always to keep your cash flow strong, keep your reserves in place. Don't ever get yourself out on the edge too much because, if your timing's wrong, it can be destructive. So run a good business, keep debt down, be entrepreneurial, always look for opportunities. people say, in the most chaotic circumstances, there's opportunities. There are. I mean, I see opportunities right now. I was mentioning the franchising a second ago. There are opportunities and places to invest your money, time, and effort today. So you got to be savvy. You got to be able to pivot. You got to look for those opportunities. But also, while we know there's going to be recessionary pressures for the next 12 to 18 months, you've also got to continue to watch your cash and just be conservative. You're probably not going to be as quick or wild to take advantage of an opportunity. You got to be a little bit more measured with it, but take them because the opportunities that will present themselves now won't be there later.
And a good example of the opportunity of being entrepreneurial in a recession or in tough times, did you launch the alcohol-infused brand during COVID?
Yes, right. We were actually supposed to launch it in March of 2020.
Yeah.
We delayed it, but it was one of those things where the pump was primed and we kind of needed to get it out in the marketplace. But yeah, I mean, that was, good.
That was a risk.
Good idea.
Yeah.
Timing was terrible. So we had to make lemonade out of lemons there. It was a challenge because when you roll out any new brand like that, you've got to do events, you got to do tastings, you got to really press it out in the public because it was a new product idea. People didn't know what it was. We couldn't do any of that. All we could do was say up on the website, here it is. You can't taste it, but I promise you it tastes good. So it was a challenge. We're gonna relaunch the product. We've learned some things from the first launch. It's still available on our website, but we're going to relaunch it in the future in a different way, different formulations and stuff, and we'll still see if there's a market for a hard coffee out there.
Brian, so we'll get to comments and questions, guys. Viewers and listeners, if you have questions for Sean Simmons, CEO of Greenberry's, put them in the feed. We'll relay them live on air. This is from Brian Klein, who's watching outside Nashville, Tennessee. He says, Jerry, I love your show and I love the interview. I've mentioned before that I'm a 2008 University of Virginia graduate, and I as well have spent a lot of time in his shop studying while drinking his coffee. Please ask your guests to highlight the various revenue verticals that Greenberry's has.
Oh, sure. Well, as I've said, it follows our business silos that we have. So we generate revenue by selling coffee beans and coffee products of all kinds through our Greenberry's Coffee Roasters company. So that revenue stream, that's really the largest piece of our business empire is selling products. So whether it's the Nitro cold brew or pounds of coffee you can buy at Costco and our own stores, that's the dominant revenue stream for us. We have the franchise model, so we bring in revenue streams through royalties and other income streams related to that, domestically and internationally. Obviously, our stores, our company-owned stores themselves, generate revenues for the company as well. So it's really those three major categories: product sales, royalties through franchising and licensing, and then the retail component itself.
The URL, guys, is startengine.com/coffee. Startengine.com/coffee to be an investor into Greenberry's.
And Jerry, just as a sideline on that, I'm really proud of the Start Engine page we did. It's separate from our website. It's got a lot of very factual, detailed industry information, a lot of statistics. Anyone that wants to look at coffee as an investment, all the information is there on the Start Engine race page.
Give us some insight into, and you've already done this, and I'm on the page. He's exactly right. Give us some insight into why someone should invest into Greenberry's.
Well, as I mentioned, we are a company that's been in business for 30 years. We've been profitable for almost all of those 30 years. So you are investing in a very well-established company. We're not a startup. We're not a new idea waiting to see if there's a marketplace. You're investing in a part of the economy that is as recession-proof and stable as I think you can get. I like to always say, we're in the business of selling a legally addictive drug, caffeine. So it's a very stable, it's a very in-demand business. You're investing in your community. And so I think just from an investment standpoint, there's tremendous growth. Some of the things you'll see on there, Nitro cold brew, for example. I mean, the percentage growth that's expected in our industry just in that category alone is astronomical. So we've got tremendous growth. The coffee business always has something booming in it. It's cafe growth, it's Nitro cold brew. Interesting statistic. They're anticipating that within the next 5 years, cold coffee is going to outsell hot coffee.
That's all I drink is cold coffee,
Yeah.
even in the winter.
Yeah.
That's all I drink.
Who would have thought that, though? But it is cold coffee of all kinds.
Why do you think that is?
Well, cold brewed coffee is a better product.
I think so.
Yes, it tastes better.
Yeah.
You can drink it all times. I think Nitro infused cold brew is a fantastic product. It takes away a lot of characteristics in coffee that some people don't like, bitterness, things like that. So I just probably because it is the superior way to make the coffee itself will drive that. So.
You're amazing.
I guess I could blame global warming, maybe. You know, I think it's climate change now, but
I think
the world's getting hot, so you need cold coffee.
We just lately have been blaming everything. Oh, it's inflation. We just blame it on inflation right there. You killed it, man.
Well,
you are just an absolutely refreshing interview.
Glad to be here.
We love having you. We got to do this again.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sean Simmons, guys, is the CEO of Greenberry's coffee company, the co-founder with his beautiful wife, Roxanne. Roxanne, hello if you're watching. I hope you're doing well. The URL is startengine.com/coffee.
9 days left.
9 days left to be an investor.
Got to do it.
9 days left to be an investor.
$110. That's all it takes.
You cannot beat that, guys.
Startengine.com. You can put it on your credit card.
Oh, you put it on your credit card.
What the heck?
There you go. Startengine.com/coffee. Judah will get that URL out there. Thank you kindly for joining us, guys, on the I Love CVille Show. I had 8 states on today's program. We will be back tomorrow at 10:15 a.m. with Today y Mañana right here on the I Love CVille Network. So long, everybody. Tell us when the mics are on.